Namaskar, Nilesh Oak here. In this episode, I am going to discuss the problem of Treta Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga in the context of Ramayana and Mahabharata. This is a relatively old problem that people are trying to solve for at least 300 to 400 years. So we will do a brief Purva Paksha and then we will quickly jump into the solution. So let me start sharing the PowerPoint. So comprehending Treta Yuga tradition of Ramayana, comprehending the Dwapar and Kali Yuga tradition descriptions of the Mahabharata in the context of all the discussion that occurs about the Yuga. It almost appears that Indians, traditional or otherwise, are obsessed with Yuga. And so anytime there is a discussion about the dating of Ramayana or Mahabharata, we hear this conflict between people's assumption about how long ago was the Treta Yuga and the actual timing of Ramayana. Okay, quick summary of my work. This is important to set the context. And as I said, this is a recurring problem, a chronic problem in the Indian civilizational discourse, especially as it relates to the chronology of historical events. What you see is the horizontal axis of time. Today is us here right now, 21st century. You go back, Gregorian calendar as a reference, let's say, go back to zero. That's going back 2000 years. And then when we go beyond that, it's a BCE time frame. So minus 5K refers to 5000 BC, 10,000 BC, 15,000 BC, 20,000 BC, and so on. Quickly to give you the summary of my work. Now, why am I doing this? Professor John Archibald Wheeler, a great theoretical physicist, a great professor at Princeton University, he said, if you want to understand, if you want to comprehend a specific subject, the best way to do it is to find the toughest unsolved problem in that discipline of science, and then go solve it. Now, in reality, you may be successful in solving it, or you may not be successful in solving it. But if you truly try to solve the problem, especially the toughest unsolved problem, in the process, you are going to comprehend that subject very well. So that's why I'm mentioning what the work I did and where does the problem occurs. So as many of you are familiar, I used all the astronomy evidence from the Mahabharata text and in a scientific fashion tested every single objective, arrived at 5561 BC for the year of Mahabharata war. I did the same thing for Ramayana, extracted close to 600 astronomy references from this text of Valmiki Ramayana, and again scientifically, objectively, empirically tested each one of them to arrive at 12,209 BC for the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha. Then looking at the hydrology references, the references to rivers, the morphodynamics of rivers, the geology evidence, geophysics evidence, geochemistry evidence, along with the Rigvedic Richa, I could assert that the last time period for the Rigveda could be contemporary with the Mahabharata. as many of us know from the narrative descriptions, that Vyasa recasted, re-edited the Veda, and naturally that happened along with the Mahabharata. Now, that is not the reason why I am placing the last portions of Rig Veda contemporary with Mahabharata, but actually there are references which at least allude to this contemporary nature of some of the ruchas in the Rig Veda and Mahabharata time. But as far as the oldest portions are concerned, we don't have a specific time bracket. But what we can say with the confidence that definitely the oldest portions of Rig Veda are older than 24,000 years. Okay. So far, so good. Now, those people who read my works and those who have a scientific acumen, understand how the science is done, understand the logical reasoning, are frankly very impressed with this evidence. They are further impressed when they look at that these particular time frame and specific time events for the Mahabharata, Ramayana, etc., are actually corroborated by very rich empirical evidence coming from multiple different disciplines of science. And I am slowly bringing that evidence through the videos through my YouTube channel. So far, so good. Now, where does the problem come? It's a frequently asked question, and that question is this. Now, it is true that in the Mahabharata text, we have a description that the Mahabharata war or Mahabharata took place at the interface during the Sandhi period of a Dwapara Yuga and Kali Yuga. And sometimes you can see some slight variations, okay? At the end of Dwapara, it will say, which means the same thing. If you go to Valmiki Ramayana, even internally in Valmiki Ramayana, you will see the reference to the timing of Ramayana referred as a TretaYuga. So far, so good. So where is the problem? All right, the problem begins when we, now by when I say we, I don't mean me myself, no. But there are many researchers, and almost it has become a stubborn part of our existing tradition that as soon as we talk of a yuga, for a mysterious reason, we immediately start thinking in terms of these long, big numbers. For example, and I'm calling that yuga dogma, and I'll tell you why I call that yuga dogma. This is what most of you would be familiar with. For example, the duration of Kali Yuga is 432,000 years. The duration of Dwapar is twice that of 432, the Kali Yuga time, which is 864,000 years. 3 times is a Treta, 4 times is a Satya or Krita Yuga. Okay, Satya Yuga is also called Krita Yuga. Kali Yuga is also called a Pushya Yuga or a Tishya Yuga. And there are some different names for Dwapar Yuga and possibly for Treta Yuga. That's not our concern today. In fact, not many people, when they actually understand the scientific force of my claim for the year of Mahabharata war, 5561 BCE, are not that much bothered to think that the Kali, it could be the time of a Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga. They said, okay, that can happen. There is a Sandhi period and so on. But many people, because they are stuck with this one specific definition of a yuga duration, when I mentioned 12,209 BCE as the timing of Ramayana, and also that it is happened during the Treta Yuga, immediately they are really stuck in the sense of they're saying, all right, so the Dwapara Yuga is 864,000. So no matter when the Kali Yuga began, so sometime around the Mahabharata, and if you add those 864,000 years going backwards, then the Ramayana has to be at least 1,000,000 years ago. Okay, if this definition is the only definition of a yuga, and if that can be applied to the chronological aspect of the historical events of Indian civilization, that argument would have been valid. Unfortunately, or fortunately I should say, that is not the case. There is a lot of confusion with the usage of this particular yuga definition, and I am going to explain that in this particular video. All right, so where do we begin? So this is our problem. If we take this as the yuga definition, especially for the duration of Dwapara, then the Ramayana occurring 14,000 years ago cannot be reconciled. Now, let me tell you the evidence of the Valmiki Ramayana, 600 plus rich astronomy evidence, and it's so solid that I have no doubt in my mind, and any sensible person reading my book on the Ramayana, reading it, anyone with a scientific acumen, logical reasoning, will have no doubt about the veracity of 12,209 BC. So, how do we reconcile it? All right, we will go through that. But before I say that, let me also add that there is much additional evidence beyond astronomy coming from multiple disciplines of sciences, say like paleontology, hydrology, geology, geophysics, climatology, oceanography, genetics, on and on, that also supports this entire scenario. So we are on a solid ground in terms of these dates. The problem is how to reconcile with this one specific definition of a yuga duration. That is the focus of this presentation. All right. So I'm going to give you an example. The essentially the answer I'm going to give you is that the Yuga definition of this longer duration that is being used is actually never meant, it was never designed to be used for the chronological dating, for tracking, or for separating historical events. That Yuga definition was never meant for chronological considerations, but someone somewhere, and we don't know that right now, maybe in future as the research progresses we may able to find out that who made that mistake, we may able to know the answer. But the fact remains that that is the blunder, and that is causing us so many problems in us understanding our historical timeline. Just to give you an example, just because we use the word yuga doesn't immediately means Kali Yuga or whatever, doesn't immediately means like a very long big number like 432,000 or 864,000 years. In fact, many times the yuga by itself, it doesn't even mean a measurement for a time, and I'm going to show you how many different types of yuga we have in our ancient Indian civilizations. But therefore I'm bringing this metaphor just because you hear a word and it sounds identical or sounds similar. For example, light year versus solar year, they both are units of measure. But as number of you would know, and if you don't know, then you have to accept this, what I'm going to tell you on the Shraddha, that actually the light year is not a unit of time, but actually it's a unit of distance measured in meters and kilometers and miles. And the solar year, which is made up of 365 days approximately, is the measure of time. Okay. Now the light year is based on something that has to do with the time. For example, it is based on how far a ray of light can travel within a year. Okay, so yes, there is a sense of time, but it is really used as a measure for a distance. But if someone is not aware of that, what may happen is somebody may think of light year and solar years as both units of measuring somebody's say age, and well, we are going to have a problem. It's visually, I can say that it's as if we are taking a ruler, okay, that we used to measure the distance, but now we are applying to measure the time. Now you can see some similarities. There's a short arm, long arm, and seconds arm. You know, they look like a ruler too, and they are moving around, but these are two different things. That is actually the problem that has occurred, and that is the solution. So what is the problem and what is the solution? The solution is that the Mahayuga of 4.32 million years, or a Kali Yuga of 432,000 years, is a purely mathematical formulation in the discipline of astronomy. And why is it used? It is used in mathematical formulation, mind you, so that we can identify, we can track, we can communicate precise and accurate orbital periods of the moving celestial bodies, our planets, moon, sun, Jupiter, and so on. It was never meant to be used for tracking the chronological time for our historical events. And that is the answer, what has caused the problem. But you would say, where is your evidence? It's very important that you ask for the evidence. Okay. Remember Hitchens razor. A claim made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So anyone making any claim always ask the question, what is your evidence? Demand the source of it, and then ask the question, is this objectively testable? Again, demand a, a demonstration of that objectively testable evidence. All right. I have given a very detailed talk somewhere else, so I will not repeat it, but I have shown how this 4.32 million years of Yuga, it is mentioned in Surya Siddhanta, it is also mentioned in Aryabhatiya, and they both are astronomy texts. Okay, so what does it actually achieves? This is what it achieves. Look at that first row, or rather the second row with sun. That is that 4.32 million years, or you can say 432,000 years, depending on what we are doing. In this case, million. That is the Mahayuga. In both astronomy texts, and I'm sure there are other astronomy texts in the Indian tradition which also list these, the number of rotations of the moon during that 4.32 million years of Mahayuga, which is the sun's, those many sun's rotations, are given. And we can use this to actually calculate the orbital period of each of these celestial body. Okay, so that's what it is used for. So that, look, we get the exact precisely orbital period down to a fractional details and some good significant decimal places. This is from Surya Siddhanta. You can also see the exactly same thing for Aryabhatiya. But as I said, that 4.32 converted to Kali Yuga, that is 1:10 ratio there, as 432,000, and therefore twice that is 864,000 Dwapar, and then the confusion begins. How can Ramayana be in only 14,000 years ago? There is additional confusion if you get into multiple yugas and 24 yugas and 28 yugas. Okay, this comes from the Puranic tradition. I'm not going to get into it, but that utter confusion is again based on this astronomy mathematical formulations, unfortunately, and in a wrong fashion applied to chronology study of Indian civilization.